Highland, Utah is not known for being a busy place. It's actually quite quiet. So it was really surprising when Shannon Bird called the Lone Peak Police Department at 2 a.m., upset and asking for help because she couldn't feed her baby. While it was unusual for her to call the police, the way the officers responded was even more unexpected. Shannon and Dallin Bird were living the dream in their hometown of Highland, Utah. They had a beautiful house right in the middle of some of Utah's most scenic nature, just a stone's throw away from Salt Lake City. While Dallin worked hard to provide a top-notch life for his growing family, his wife Shannon became quite popular on social media by posting photos and writing articles about their high-fashion lifestyle and lavish vacations. She made parenthood look like a good time, but the good times were coming to an end, and soon she would find herself in an absolute panic. Winter 2019 brought several big surprises for Shannon Burt and her husband Dallin. For one, the couple welcomed their newest addition, London. As their fifth child, by the time their new daughter arrived, Shannon felt like an expert in the parenting game. The seasoned mother had zero worries about caring for a new baby while also looking after her 4 other children. However, even this experienced parent soon found things getting out of control. This time, there were more obstacles than usual and things began to get complicated. One of these challenges struck soon after leaving the hospital. Shannon's 4th child, Brooklyn, found himself in quite a bind when he seriously injured his shin while playing outside. This accident occurred only 2 months after the birth of his little sister. As a result, Shannon's workload doubled. Not only did she have to care for her newborn baby, but now she had to look after Brooklyn, who was struggling with his crutches and needed constant assistance. While her husband, Dallin, helped when he could, his assistance was limited. New parents often want to spend every waking second caring for their child, but that's rarely an option. A monthly paycheck is essential, and earning it means getting up, saying goodbye to the kids, and heading out to work for at least 8 hours. Despite having a newborn baby, an injured son, and 3 other kids who needed care, Dallin was called away on a business trip to Las Vegas. This left Shannon in a difficult situation. She needed to take care of her 5 little ones all on her own. At this point, she truly felt the pressure of caring for her children. For a while, things were going quite smoothly, and Shannon felt like she was managing her kids decently. She had become adept at juggling her duties for her newborn, Brooklyn's injury, and the other 3 kids with hardly any problems. However, everything suddenly took a turn for the worse. At around midnight on January 29, 2020, little London began wailing in her crib. Of course, this was nothing new for Shannon. She knew it was time to feed her baby daughter as usual. But this time, as she prepared to nurse London, it seemed she had a bit of a problem on her hands. Baby London eagerly latched onto her mother, but she wasn't getting any of the milk she craved. For a while, Shannon tried to get something out, but nothing would come. It appeared that the well had dried up for London. Shannon took to the kitchen and checked her fridge for some reserves. She found that while there was some milk, it definitely wasn't enough for the young baby. By the time the clock struck 2 a.m., Shannon was desperate. She had to think of some solution to her daughter's crying. That's when she called someone who she knew wouldn't let her down. Shannon called Dallin in Las Vegas, and like any good husband would, he immediately stepped up to the plate to do what he could from afar. He'd assured Shannon to stay calm and not freak out. The two laid their options on the table and decided that it might be best to make some calls. Dallin contacted some close family friends but was completely out of luck. Since it was the middle of the night, each and every one of them was sleeping too soundly to hear the rings. At that point, Shannon thought of an option that might work. She hung up on her husband and began to take action. Shannon wasn't about to wake up her 4 sleeping children, including Brooklyn with his leg cast, pile them into the van and drive to the local Walmart to grab some baby formula. And of course, she wasn't going to leave her babies home alone to do that herself. She knew that her kids could easily get into trouble when left alone, and the last thing she wanted was another injured child. She decided that the best solution would be to call on her neighbors for help. It seemed desperate, but she was about to get a response she never expected. Shannon called her neighbors, but all their phones just rang into the night until they reached voicemail. One after another, each call was ignored. Amid her desperation, Shannon began to spiral into a state of panic. Finally, she reached out to someone who had never let her down, her mother. She just knew that her mother would be the one to answer and come to the rescue. However, she was wrong. Her mother's phone rang a few times and then went to voicemail. Shannon was officially on her own. Given her situation, what she did next was more than a bit surprising. Police receive calls at all times of day and night, and usually, when they do, it involves burglary, gunshots, domestic violence, or something much worse. Even in an area as relatively calm as Highland, Utah, a 911 call usually means something dire. That said, dispatch was taken aback when they received a call from a hysterical Shannon talking about milk. Judging by the tone of her voice, one would think she was hiding under her bed, while an armed burglar was cleaning out the home. Putting that tone aside, the dispatcher couldn't believe what the pleading mother was actually saying. While some might expect the police dispatcher to be cold towards the mother and tell her that running low on milk didn't exactly qualify as an emergency, the responders were remarkably human about the dilemma. They listened to Shannon explain what was going on. She said, "I've been calling neighbors, and no one will answer. I've never been in this predicament ever. My milk just literally dried out. This is my 5th kid, and this has never happened." Going against the grain of typical dispatchers, this kind worker didn't hesitate to do the right thing for this frantic mother in need. The dispatcher sent Shannon's request for milk to a police officer in the neighboring Lone Peak, Brett Wagstaff. In all his years on the force, he never heard such a request. However, he knew it was his duty to offer any assistance he could. The officer jumped into his police cruiser and drove into the night. He soon found himself heading to a local convenience store to buy some milk to help Shannon feed her baby. He bought a gallon of milk and headed to the Berg residence. When he arrived, Shannon was waiting for him at the door. However, the mother wasn't exactly thrilled by the milk bottle in his hand. The officer's milk just wouldn't do. As Officer Wagstaff walked up to the front door, Shannon broke out into a nervous explanation and told him how she had trouble reaching her neighbors and even her own mother, and that she had never found herself in a situation like this before. Officer Wagstaff assured her that everything was okay and asked if the milk he brought would work for her. She quickly told him that, in fact, a gallon of milk would do very little for her baby. London was only 6 weeks old and needed something a little more baby-friendly, something special that might be a challenge for some people to find. What baby London needed was baby formula. Store-bought cow's milk doesn't have enough iron for a baby and can, in fact, lead to a world of medical issues. Officer Wagstaff could have become frustrated with Shannon. After all, he'd gone through all this trouble on her behalf. However, he was patient with her through and through. He handed her the milk jug and said, "We'll leave this with you. We'll be right back with some formula for your baby. She's adorable." He then headed back to his car and drove to the local Walmart. With his fair share of experience with babies, Officer Wagstaff knew just what to get for Shannon's daughter. After a few moments, Officer Wagstaff returned to Shannon's house with the formula he hoped she'd be able to use to feed her baby. He assured her it was a quality formula by saying, "That's the same stuff we gave to my daughter when she was first born, so hopefully it doesn't upset her stomach." While Shannon tried to give the police officer some money for the formula, he wasn't willing to accept her payment. His job was to protect and serve everyone in his community, and he'd done just that. They wished each other a good night and parted ways. That said, Shannon would be in for a huge surprise in the morning. After the exchange, Shannon and Officer Wagstaff both likely assumed that they'd move on with their lives. However, the story was too good to keep contained. The Lone Peak Police Department posted about the unique turn of events on Facebook the following morning. The story received tons of likes and shares and eventually reached people across the nation. It didn't take long for major media outlets to pick up the story. Pretty soon, Shannon and Officer Wagstaff were being interviewed by big names like CNN, Fox, Inside Edition, and Daily Mail. Yet beyond the exposure, one of the most surprising aspects of the coverage was the range of comments people sent in. While many were moved by Shannon's story and Officer Wagstaff's kindness, others were critical, especially their mothers. Some felt Shannon wasn't truly desperate and should have managed better, while others thought calling 911 for formula was a waste of police resources. One viewer commented that Shannon likely had a car and money, so using 911 was unnecessary. However, not everyone was negative. Some offered helpful advice, suggesting that new moms always keep some formula on hand. In the end, Shannon learned an important lesson. She admitted to news outlets that this experience was the first time she felt so powerless and desperate. She vowed to always keep formula available in the future.